The problems facing New Zealand's primary sector have been mounting at a rapid pace. So I think it's time for open hearts and open minds. Welcome to Sarah's Country, to our wonderful friends and whānau of the show. I genuinely love hearing the stories of how you tune in, because there's a multitude of different ways. Of course, it starts off with a live show, Monday through Wednesday from 7 p.m. New Zealand time. And of course, then wherever it is convenient across your day, as the full show and interviews go live on demand on podcasts from 5 a.m, ready to kick off your morning. Now, I've had some awesome feedback about Sarah's Country being the soundtrack to your morning treadmill, or the commentary to the matters most on the ground from the ear of an agricultural helicopter pilot. I absolutely love hearing from you, and please send those messages in via anywhere on the social media platforms, or of course Sarah at sarahscountry.com. Kia ora, I'm your host Sarah Perry, and broadcasting from the comfort still of my home. I'm relentless. One day we'll put the finishing touches on this new Sarah's Country set. And it will get me onto the topic of our commentary tonight. We do have our new premise set up in Taitapu in Canterbury near Lincoln, and it's beautiful to be in there. And the lovely space is airy. I can see the Port Hills. I've got this. It's just a lovely, beautiful community. We're close to Christchurch, but I just struggle to make decisions on the creativity of this, and it just led me to think, after this news story that is happening around our economy here in New Zealand, women in making decisions on interiors. Shouldn't specify gender, but women making a decision in general, we're pretty painful, I know that. But home renos, this post-lockdown spending boom, has been announced by BNZ's economist to set to continue, as consumers here in New Zealand have decided that they're more comfortable about their futures following a recent survey, and asked whether COVID-19 has made them better or worse off financially. Nearly 700 of the respondents replied no change, compared to just over 300 who said worse off and 300 better off, so a net zero impact. The key reason is because, naturally, not spending money on travelling overseas, and Kiwis are wonderful world travellers, and so therefore, where's all that cash going? Renovations, with 34% of their surveys respondents of where they're going to park this extra cash, and 20% on their gardening. And followed by, of course, their investment property. Of course, we've got to upgrade those by next July in terms of those standards on those investment properties. But what I'd love to have a chat with you, whoever is joining us live, and I love seeing our regulars pop in the comments, but I also love seeing some comments from some first-time callers. What would be one thing if, say, for instance, you won lotto, or you came into a bit of cash, or you already have planned to park that cash from an overseas holiday and put into a little bit of a reno, something that's been bugging you around the place, or bugging you that a certain someone said they were going to get around to that hasn't. Make sure you tag them if you like. I've just recently bought in Lincoln, and the deck, there's this asphalt everywhere, just concrete. There's nothing better than a good wooden deck, especially coming into summer. It's not going to be a big area, and I don't think it's going to cost a lot of money, but I just feel that, it's summer when you walk on a deck, and I've said that so many times with my Kiwi accent that the people around the world will be laughing at those last words I've just realised. I'd love to hear, wherever you are listening and watching to us live, in the comments below. I see all your comments here below, and I'd love to see who is joining us to read those out throughout the show. So who are the wonderful guests that will join us tonight on Sarah's Country? After 7:20, Anchor is introducing low carbon packaging. Fonterra's brand manager Brett Henshaw will join us to explain how the cooperative is banking on the sustainable movement. And then after 7:30, a recent New Zealand Rural General Practice Network webinar revealed that the rural health workforce is in crisis, facing a shortage of doctors, nurses and allied health professionals. Cheviot Rural General Practitioner Dr Anthea Prentice is going to join us in terms of the feedback that she got from the politicians that presented what they would do throughout this webinar. Now, to close the show, we have the wonderful 2020 Zanda Mcdonald Award winner, Jack Raharuhi, who shares his professional development journey across New Zealand's primary sector, visiting industry leaders. This is, of course, part of the Primary Platinum Producers a group, and, of course, the wonderful Zanda Mcdonald is acknowledged in his legacy in this award. We'll be joined by Jack to close the show as he is coming in off that tour. First up on the show, Pacific Cooperation Foundation Chair John Fiso shares his frustrations about our horticulture industry's lack of workers. But it's not so much about that. It's the ability that decision makers have completely overlooked the COVID-free Pacific workers. And this is where a lot of our regional seasonal employers actually come from as a solution. John is going to join us very shortly here on Sarah's Country. This is Sarah's Country. Well, the horticulture sector is targeting all areas of the labour force to draw in the greater numbers that are needed in workers as harvest season looms. For this coming season, the sector has anticipated employing 16,000 RSE workers and it remains highly doubtful. This is potentially a $9.5 billion loss due to this worker shortage to the horticulture sector. And places like Samoa have been hit hard by the loss of tourism, more than New Zealand, with a majority of that country's economic impact being felt there. And these RSE jobs over here in New Zealand are huge in terms of the impact back into the well-being of our Pacific nation that hold New Zealand passports. Pacific cooperative, Sorry, I'm just going to do that again. My apologies, John. I haven't redone an interview top for a wee bit. That was me. My apologies. Where are we? Cool. The horticulture sector is targeting all areas of the labour force here in New Zealand to draw in greater numbers of workers as the harvest season looms. For the coming season, the sector has anticipated employing 16,000 RSE workers, and this remains highly doubtful that they will be able to come into this country at a potential loss of $9.5 billion to the industry. Places like Samoa have been hit hard by the loss of tourism and the loss of jobs over there from the income generated here in New Zealand and sent back to those families being felt. Pacific Cooperation Foundation Chair John Fiso is urging decision makers not to overlook this opportunity to solve the looming worker shortage, and it's a real solution to both the Pacific neighbours and to our labour shortage here at home. A win-win, you would think. And John joins us now. John, welcome to Sarah's Country. I'm actually doing a big old face palm to this one because it makes sense. Pacific Island is COVID-free and we're desperate for the workers. How frustrating is this for your members?
Well, good afternoon, Sarah. I think we're looking at a win-win situation. I think, as you pointed out correctly, trade, not just in Samoa, but across the Pacific, rely heavily on tourism, and that's now non-existent. So you've got 70% of the revenues that come is made up of tourism. So clearly the Pacific Island countries are heavily affected by the COVID disease across the Pacific, which means no revenues and almost getting to the point where you might argue that it's now becoming a humanitarian issue over there, because when you take away all that income, there's going to be a lot of shortfalls all over the place. So hence the ability for Pacific workers to come to New Zealand, as they have done in the past, and their ability to generate income, which was on average for a 6-month stay in New Zealand, is 37,000 New Zealand dollars, which say in Samoa equates to close to 70 or 75,000 salars over there, which is significantly almost 3 times more than the average wage. So you would expect that the RSC workers coming to New Zealand would be benefiting greatly, but also the businesses in New Zealand who require the workers will also benefit from not having all that fruit picked in the horticultural sector being serviced. And therefore New Zealand gets to have foreign earnings. So it does seem to me to be a win-win situation.
I am going to leave politics to the end of this because I do want to understand first and foremost, what is New Zealand's obligations to our friends in the Pacific around COVID and those conversations to ensure that we are responsible just as much for the humanitarian response to those who hold New Zealand passports?
Well, I think the realm countries in particular who actually travel on New Zealand passports and effectively are New Zealanders, we think that that's the first point of call. If you've got the realm countries, Niue, Cook Islands, Tokelau, they're all COVID-free, so we think that there's a great chance that those are the ones that should be coming in first. And I think also those programs for RSC have been well received in those countries. And then you've got the special friendship countries, Samoa, Tonga, Fiji, which we've got a close relationship with them. And so, we've got to demonstrate how close those relationships are in times of need. And so the realm countries, definitely. The special relationship countries, well, we need to, demonstrate that we have got a special relationship. Otherwise, there's no point in having them. And in the past, those specific countries have helped New Zealand in times of need in the 70s and 60s when we had labour market shortages. We brought a lot of the Pacific Islanders into New Zealand to work in a lot of the sectors that we required to were short on labour force. And again now, we've got the same situation. And so, look, the only thing is that we may end up providing humanitarian aid anyway. And so wouldn't it be better to actually have Pacific countries, take some of the burden of helping their own people themselves by having them work in New Zealand and then we're sending back the money that is urgently required back to the island.
You talk about special relationships, and our Minister of Immigration, Chris Farfoy, has a very special relationship with the Pacific, with his family immigrating here from Tokelau. Would that not make sense of his understanding of the close neighbourly support that we do have, this integration of trade and the ability for the Pacific to stand on its own 2 feet, especially when they're COVID-free? What have been your conversations with Minister Farfoy, John, in terms of being able to progress this quickly?
Well, we haven't had any conversations with Mr. Farfoy. But what we do know is that, Tokelau is a realm country, and we know that there's other competing interests, and this is the difficulty when you've got the political situation we have in New Zealand. I mean, I guess one of the arguments put forward is that we're trying to employ New Zealanders first. And I can understand that, but I don't think we're going to be able to, and when it's already proven in the last few weeks, we haven't been able to employ New Zealanders in those horticultural, dairy, primary industry jobs to the level that we need, and that's why we have to have the RSC workers coming. So, we could be waiting for a long time if we think that we're going to fill the 60,000 jobs across all of those sectors by local New Zealanders who have got to uproot themselves and go into the regions, which, to be fair, might be a big ask for them as opposed to Pacific Islanders highly motivated coming in and earning 3 times more of their wages in the Pacific. and also COVID-free. So I think the argument around employing New Zealanders first, I understand that, but I don't think we're going to pull the numbers just with that, and that's why we need the RSE workers.
What an extremely frustrating situation. John Fiso, the chairman of the Pacific Cooperation Foundation. Now, for those who have been maybe following and listening in from the Northern Hemisphere, terminology we use, RSE workers that John was talking about, this is in relation to the Regional Seasonal Employers scheme that we run here, where migrant workers come in for a period of 6 months to fill the labour shortages in our primary sector. Now, up next on Sarah's Country, we have Brett Henshaw joining us from Fonterra. He's the Managing Director for Brands, as Anchor have introduced low carbon packaging, jumping on consumer trends to ensure that consumption is environmentally friendly, among other things that we will chat to with Brett very shortly. This is Sarah's Country.
Delicious. Ever wondered where it starts? Does it start with care? Respect. Fresh grass 365 days a year. The truth is, delicious doesn't start in a single moment or with a single ingredient. Delicious starts here.
As reported by Hugh Stringelman in this week's Farmers Weekly, Anchor is introducing low-carbon packaging. Fonterra Brands has launched a plant-based alternative bottle for its standard Anchor Blue top milk in the North Island. But consumers will have to pay a little more for the sustainable packaging. And we're joined now by Brett Henshaw, Fonterra's Brands Managing Director. Brett, 25 cents. Where was that premium determined by?
Yes, hi Sarah, and nice to be talking to you. So the processing cost of this particular type of plastic is very different to traditional fossil fuel-based plastic. So it's literally taking sugarcane, turning that into ethanol. The ethanol is turned into plastic chips. Those are then blow molded into bottles, and that process is significantly more technologically driven and certainly more expensive than the traditional way of blowing fossil fuel bottles. So it's a cost increase that is incurred through that process. We then, I think it's important to note that we only recommend the prices from a retail point of view. At the end of the day, our customers set that retail price, but we are in that vicinity of the cost increase that you've referred to.
So this is high density polyethylene. Is that how you explain
Polyethylene.
it? Polyethylene.
HDPE.
My apologies.
Correct.
Brought in from Brazil, and for Fonterra to claim low carbon plastic that is biodegradable. The reason, I did come in there with that price premium of 25 cents is if we had a rubbish tax that was significantly higher, would that be a deterrent, and that premium of cost covering to be carbon neutral wouldn't have to be as much, because that deterrent would be there from at the other side of the way this production scale in terms of that circular product life cycle?
Look, so that's conjecture at the moment. Certainly at this point in time, what we're focusing on is choice. And this is one step in our pledge to move to 100% recyclable, compostable, and renewable by 2025. It's a pledge that we've made on our packaging, and this is one step for us. And it really is about providing a choice in the range, across all the milk bottles that we have.
And what type of consumer feedback are you getting about Fonterra's pledges that they are making 2025 to have all retail packaging reusable, recyclable or compostable? And as well, of course, from the processing part of Fonterra, there's some significant goals there as well. Do you know that it is having a significant impact in terms of consumers' perception of dairy here in New Zealand?
Yes, so certainly the research that we've done on this new bottle supports, that we're on the right journey here. And consumers generally are looking for more sustainable options and alternatives. And as I say, this is one of a number of initiatives that we are doing. As you say, we also have a goal for zero waste to landfill from a manufacturing site by 2025. These types of benefits and messages do resonate with consumers as they make their choices on what brands to use.
I do follow the compostable packaging movement very closely, but not close enough to be an expert in it, Brett. But there is a lot of scepticism about the infrastructure that we need here in New Zealand and the different levels of compostability or biodegradability of these products. It must be quite a lot to sort of navigate and then make a choice on to what level and how that can be home compostable as opposed to having commercial compostable and biodegradable facilities at our waste management plants.
Yes, so look, I think it's important to mention here that this bottle is 100% recyclable. We're not claiming anything about being able to be compostable, and that's an important difference. So this bottle, like our other bottles, can be recycled into all sorts of things. We're recycling into fence posts. We've worked with Sky City on recycling into shampoo bottles. They're processed and turned into some building materials. So there is a whole host of things that the bottles can be repurposed to do, including milk crates and a number of other things. So we're not in any way promising that this bottle is compostable. It's actually 100% recyclable, which is an important difference. And you're right, the infrastructure in New Zealand is really still in its infancy in that whole area of commercial compostability.
Yeah. No, but it's a fantastic circular story, especially when you're talking about fence posts going back onto dairy farms or, as you said, milk crates that are delivering that milk and a wonderful story there as well. Thank you so much for taking the time to join us, Managing Director for Brands for Fonterra, Brett Henshaw. And coming up on Sarah's Country, we have Dr Anthea Prentice, a rural GP from Cheviot. Now, I would love to hear Anthea's thoughts on a recent webinar around the state of our rural health. And this was all of the politicians that health spokesmen that joined the New Zealand Rural General Practice Network in terms of how we are going to approach these concerns of the industry. All that up next on Sarah's Country. This is Sarah's Country.
Balance has its own team of innovation specialists. It's our job to lead the way, working with some of the most cutting-edge science and research. We've got partnerships with some of the best suppliers in the world, so our farmers get the very best products for New Zealand farms.
And in every region across the country, the conditions are very different, and farmers' and growers' needs are too.
That's why we're always looking for solutions that are just right, like here at our Huntly Service Centre.
And here in Canterbury, we've got a self-service silo, so I can pick up fat when it suits me.
And here in Morrinsville, we've got a world-class mill. That means that we can safely deliver our customers with the freshest, highest quality feed and minerals.
It's about putting the customer first because that's what drives our business.
We've been focusing on faster turnaround of orders. We've got to get the right products to the right places at the right times.
Here in Taranaki, we've got New Zealand's only urea manufacturing plant. It's where we create our premium sustained fertiliser.
We're supplying nationwide and working locally. By getting to know you and what you want to achieve, we can help you get there.
And with the new My Balance platform, Balance has put my farm at my fingertips.
In fact, we offer support in all sorts of ways, sharing the best nutrition practice with farming families across the country. Whether we're talking about animal health, farm productivity,
or looking after our natural environment, sustainability underpins everything we do. We use our local expertise and the latest tools to help farmers and growers navigate the changing regulations, so you can leave your farm in great shape for the future.
And we can be really accurate, avoiding areas like wetlands and waterways with our award-winning Spread Smart tech. It makes the job far safer, more efficient, and gives you the best results.
When you've got access to that kind of know-how, you've got the support you need to make sure you're farming sustainably. It's that kind of thinking that'll keep us going for generations to come.
Together creating the best soil and feed on earth.
Now, welcome to Serious Country. If you've just joined us and tuning in live, welcome. Tonight's comments theme is around interior design. And of course, in New Zealand, in terms of reality TV, we have an obsession with things like The Block with Mark Richardson, or of course Grand Designs. How good is that? Last night's episode was at home in Central Otago, and I know a lot of friends were watching. The reason I know is the fact that we're in this group chat. It's for organising New Year's, and we're in our mid-30s. It's not that exciting, but that we're talking about TV programs, but one couple member was talking to the other couple member in the messenger, and I said, don't you guys, share the same lounge or the same bed to talk to each other? Oh, no, he's out watching the TV and I'm in bed because I wasn't allowed to watch what I wanted to watch, which was Grand Designs. And he replied saying the Red Stag Timber Hunters Club was on. And then I replied saying, well, hang on, aren't you meant to be a lawyer and better at negotiating? Of which she said that she's worked out that there's some of the small things that you let them win with. And I thought about that a lot when it's talking about renovations and making those decisions as a couple. When you want red and he wants blue, no, not politically, I'm just as metaphorically, you want an oak tree and he wants a ko-fi tree, as an example. And what leads me to that is the wonderful Brett is joining us here again in the comments. Oh dear, you raised some questions that I don't want to answer live here, LOL. My wife says we need a new bathroom and a new kitchen, and I say, we need some new fences. So for all farming couples out there in need of a new fences or a new bathroom, our thoughts are with you tonight. But of course, we're talking about this because there is a new survey out that a lot of this cash that was going into overseas holidays is being poured domestically into renovating our properties. Kiwis love DIY. We love our backyard, and we absolutely love investing in property in terms of residential investments that we tenant out. And of course, being able to do them, flicking them's probably not worth it anymore, that 5-year bright line test. But we love taking something and turning it into one man's junk is another man's treasure. It's such a Kiwi part of our DNA. If you are watching with us live, I'd love to hear what projects you're working on. It could be as simple as building a veggie garden out of some pallets, because as we go into spring, what a great thing to be able to do. I've shared that we're going to do a deck here on the new Lincoln property, and I've certainly got a lot of more gardening parts that I do want to be able to put in to spruce up and hide that there's actually other houses really close around me. One day it won't be the case, but in the meantime, it's doing us really well. Now, following Neil Wallace's article in Farmers Weekly this week, titled Political Parties Debate Rural Healthcare, it has come to our attention that the rural health workforce is crying out in crisis, facing the shortage of doctors, nurses and health professionals. And this is following a recent New Zealand Rural General Practice Network webinar, whereby 4 of the political parties were put to the test. Why should we have to rely on health professionals from overseas, as it's not sustainable and a new approach is urgently needed? Joining us now is Dr Anthea Prentice, who's been a rural GP in Cheviot, North Canterbury, for over 25 years. Welcome to Serious Country, Anthea. It's a privilege to have you on the show.
Thank you, Sarah. Yes.
I do have to make a disclaimer that Anthea's beautiful daughter Tessa has recently joined the Serious Country team as my editorial producer, taking the weight off my shoulders. Anthea, it's a privilege to have you as her mother on the show. And before we get into the topic of this evening, she's going really well.
That's very good to hear. Thank you, Sarah. Yes.
Now, of course, Cheviot's just up the road from Christchurch, and you've been in the medical profession, and particularly in the Cheviot area, for 25 years. After listening to the feedback that you heard and the policies that may have differed between the different parties on the webinar, do any of these political parties get the crisis that rural GPs are under?
I think I did hear quite a lot of them did seem to be understanding. They kind of understand some of the difficulties. They understand that there's a shortage of workforce. They're working on plans that will bring that workforce pipeline through. So we do have some rural GPs coming through, but it's not just doctors, obviously, Sarah, is it? It's nurses, it's all our allied health professionals. I think it would be nice to see whoever got into government understanding that there's 700,000 people who live in rural New Zealand, and that makes us as big as our second biggest city. And, we do have it's very dispersed, and we do need to be looking more broadly for solutions to some of our problems. And I think if whatever policies and decisions come through government, they need to be looked through a rural lens and how they affect that rural population.
Looking through a rural lens, is it just money that is is the reason why we can't attract more of these health professionals to live and work, or is it a lot more intangibles that we need to make more attractive?
I think across the board, rural GPs don't earn quite as much as our urban counterparts. I think that's partly because of that population and the travel and the distances, and also because of providing that 24-hour emergency and after-hours cover. I think there's other ways, though. It's such a satisfying and interesting career, and it can be a lot of fun too. You get to know your patients really well, and you get to do a lot of interesting things and see a lot of interesting situations, and you're very involved in the community. I think the way medical students are trained in those big tertiary hospitals where they've got a lot of collegiality support and have every diagnostic modality, CT, MRI at their fingertips, it can be a bit daunting to go into those smaller teams where you might be just one of the small making decisions about patients. And so I think those undergraduates, those students need to be encouraged out into the rural settings where they can really see the benefits and understand how it works and be part of that team and get the benefits of that. Because otherwise, I think if you've come up through the hospital system, you get into your specialties, you don't really look at general practice, or especially rural general practice, where it's perceived as being quite hard, quite difficult to be on call, and we've heard a lot about the drain and the burnout. It'd be good to hear a few more positive things about the way it plays out in real life.
It would be wonderful to hear a policy announcement around, it wouldn't necessarily be a policy announcement, or a concept around compulsory rural placement and part of the training, because it's not only the encouragement of once they've lived the lifestyle and understand it, they may be more attracted to it, but it's also at the end in terms of in the city hospitals, when we have an emergency out in rural New Zealand, that they have compassion to understand what they're dealing with and where that patient is coming from in that environment.
That's right, and understand the distances involved. And so that, if there's an accident in Cheviot or a couple of hours from a big base hospital, you have to be, you're supporting the volunteer St John's, it's the volunteer fire guys that are there directing traffic and with the jaws of life. Yeah, it's a big team approach, and I think getting those, you're absolutely right, Sarah, getting those students out into the rural setting, there isn't, they are trying to bring that in. Medical students do spend a few weeks in general practice, and as part of that, they are supposed to spend a bit of time in rural practice, which is good. But I think also encouraging rural people into medical, become nurses and become doctors, because those people understand rural communities. They're from rural communities. They love that small town New Zealand, and getting them into those training programs, because that has been shown, researchers show that those people are the people who come back and are happy to be in those rural settings.
And it has been something of our generations where teachers and nurses have come from rural areas and returned to rural areas, marrying local farmers and being an active part of the community for a long time in terms of its sense of well-being. It certainly does work. When it comes to the shift in our population back out into the regions, and this is following the COVID pandemic lockdown, and the biggest cry was coming out of the rural health profession saying, you're sending all these people out to their batches, but we don't have the ability to cope with this pandemic. Was that listened to?
Yes, there were. I mean, the other side of that, of course, is is having the rural broadband, the connectivity, not just the cell phone coverage, but the broadband. And I think that's a big consideration for anyone living rurally. I mean, if you work on a dairy farm, one of the first questions you'll ask is, what's your internet like? What's your coverage? My children like to watch Netflix or whatever. So it's quite an important consideration. And I think the government and all the political parties are working towards bringing out better broadband coverage. But there are still some real dark black spots, and there's not adequate coverage. And with COVID, of course, when we weren't able to do as many in-person consultations, we really relied on that, those video consults or that telephone consults. We did get a few. I mean, I think people did go to their batches, but it was quite well policed as well. A lot of people then drifted back to their cities because there just wasn't enough medical staff, and even just the supermarkets and all that sort of thing. You couldn't cope with the influx of all the people. So yeah, I think people did eventually drift back.
Now, of course, we're talking to GP Dr Anthea Prentice from Cheviot. 25 years in rural GP, and there was a recent webinar. I'm just bringing up there. But the Greens, Julian Genter, has claimed that the inequalities of rural health are linked to climate change, agricultural policy, food production and social inequality. Are the Greens extremely disconnected to the rural health crisis from those comments?
I suppose we all live in the environment, so we all have to be mindful of the climate change, but I think their pushes sort of tax more and spend more money. I do think the idea of decentralising, not having everything in the big cities and giving the healthcare to the rural people who are actually in these rural settings, and they know what they need if they get an opportunity to provide it locally where it's most needed. So we're not getting in our cars or using that ambulance, taking the ambulance out of the area for the 4 hours or whatever that it takes to transport a patient through to the base hospital. So, I mean, we're all aware of climate change, and we all have to be mindful of using our resources wisely and really providing healthcare where it's most needed by people who can provide it well in their communities is probably the best answer.
And from this article in Farmers Weekly, compiled by Neil Wallace, there is a lot of comparisons to some things that are working internationally with the United Kingdom's National Health Service, and suggestions by Dr Shane Reddy from the National Party about some of his experiences from Canada and Australia. Anthea, what are some of the examples you've seen that you'd like to see here in rural general practice?
I do think getting that virtual connectivity with virtual consultations could be really useful as a good tool for liaising and having specialist appointments in the hospital so that people don't have to travel. We could have people coming more rural involvement in the training and in the general practice setting. I think probably just being overall a little bit more positive and not focusing too much on the drain and the burnout of rural GPs, but talking about the wonderful small town museum, which is providing the agriculture and the fishing and the horticulture and the really is accounting for a big part of our income as a GDP of our country. So we have to start being a little bit more positive and hopefully that will filter through and allow people to see the benefits of being a rural GP.
And tomorrow night, 7 o'clock, we have Sarah's Country's election special, where one of the questions I will put to the 5 agricultural policy spokespeople is what will they do about rural broadband and its impact on rural health. Anthea, you'll have to tune in at 7 o'clock and watch that in more detail. Before we go, Anthea, in terms of the lifestyle of living in the most beautiful part of the world that you do, north of Cheviot, on the New Zealand coastline, is absolutely incredible and a beautiful place to raise your children and farm in New Zealand. But it also comes with its natural disasters as well, and the resilience that your family have had to show through the Kaikoura earthquakes. We're talking tonight about interior design and grand designs and things like that, but you had to do it out of choice. Would you be able to share with us your story and journey on that front?
We did, Sarah. So the night of that Kaikoura earthquake, and Tessa at home with us, daughter, our house was very badly affected by that 7.8 quake, and in fact it was unlivable and was more or less shaken to the ground around us. So we were very lucky to survive that episode, and from that we are now looking at rebuilding one day. I don't think it'll be a grand designs. We have obviously built a smallish place to live in, and one day we hope to rebuild on that lovely site. But unfortunately with the earthquake came quite a lot of land damage, deep fissures and cracks through the ground where our house was, and so the house had to be fully demolished, and there's really not a lot of sign of it there. And a lot of our section of the house, the garden, has actually been carted away because it was deemed unsafe. So yes, it was definitely a life-changing event for us and our family. But one day we hope to rebuild. And actually, my son is getting married in January on that site, so that's rather lovely.
Oh.
It's spurred us on to tidying it all up.
Oh, wonderful. There is always, the sunshine out of a storm, Anthea. And I mean, I can just see you when you're in your new kitchen one day and go, oh, golly, who would have ever thought I would have had one of those, So, and yes, and
exactly.
Yeah, absolutely. Silver lining. Thank you so much, Dr Anthea Prentice, there joining us from Cheviot, head of the New Zealand Rural General Practice Network's webinar with the political leaders. Now, lastly on the show, we are going to head north to the Gisborne area, whereby our 2020 Zanda Mcdonald Award winner is on tour with some industry leaders. Jack Raharuhi is going to join us live after this to share with us from his trip what he is learning and where he will take this in terms of his incredible professional development at such a young age. This is Sarah's Country.
Growing a better world takes courage. It takes foresight and vision. It's about dreaming big, then being brave enough to follow that dream through. To create a world where food is plentiful, soils are healthy, and rivers run crystal clear. A world where we grow more with less, where livestock is tended to with care. Energy is friend, not foe, and waste is a valuable resource. This is the world you're already shaping through imagination, innovation, and determination. So as small steps become huge leaps, you move boldly forward. Rabobank is there beside you to help grow a better world together.
Even when everything changes, some things will always stay the same. The cows still need milking, the economy still needs dairy, and dairy farmers will always have what it takes. Whatever you need to keep milking, our job during the lockdown is to get it to you, because we know what it takes.
What an absolute pleasure there with Dr. Anthea from North Canterbury, and sharing that journey about the devastation that they had to their home from the Kaikoura earthquakes. Of course, we're talking tonight in the comments below, and I would love to see some more comments. What is one of those things you'd like to do around your house? If you say, for instance, you came into lots of money, or it's just a tiny thing like, I've got to get round to potting those herbs. There's something about spring that just gets you motivated. I mean, I know there's a lot of people listening to this that are, no, you talk about time, Sarah, excuse me, we're lambing and calving, and she's all go. And no time for home renovations over here. But of course, it is something that we do treasure here in New Zealand. Is our house is our kingdom, and we do like to make sure it is nice. Well, I certainly know that the women that are listening, not necessarily, but they do definitely like to take pride of place. And the kitchen's just never ever finally perfect, is it? There's always something you can do to it. Anyway, I'm really excited to be joined by our next guest. I'm going to read for you these achievements. He's currently working for Pamu Farms, this is Landcorp, in Westport. He's Aha Whenua Young Māori Farmer of the Year in 2016, has been crowned now the 2020 Zanda Mcdonald Award winner. Jack Raharuhi joins us now on tour in Gisborne. Jack, welcome to the show. 27 years old, Bulla. You're working out of Bulla, the Dairy Group Operations Manager for Pamu. Tell us firstly about your day-to-day job, overseeing 4 dairy farms and a machinery syndicate. Holy moly.
Yep, so thanks for having me on the show, Sarah. It's a real privilege to be here. And so my role, Operations Manager for the Bulla Dairy Group. So have got dairy farms in the Westport region and Reefton, and it's also part of a wider West Coast structure. So we've actually got 10 dairy farms, 3 dairy supports and 2 machinery syndicates on the West Coast, and I sort of oversee half of that, but also do the 2IC development program and the apprenticeship workshops across the whole West Coast, and also lead a lot of the health and safety leadership and as well across the whole West Coast. So yeah, keeps me very busy. I've also got some involvement outside of Pamu. I chair the West Coast Focus Farm Trust and work a lot with the local high schools as well. So yeah, not a dull moment for me. Keep busy.
I am really interested to know where it all began for you in terms of your background growing up. Was this something that you always wanted as a little boy?
Nah, so so I was a bit of a troubled teen coming through into high school. I didn't do school very well. I was into drugs and alcohol and cars and doing all the naughty stuff. And my parents decided to pull me out of school and put me on my dad's friend's farm, which was located on actually one of the farms that I now oversee. So not from a farming background. I'd done it for 3 months and absolutely hated it. And then, there was a sparkle in the eye and got a real feel for it. And now I'm extremely passionate about not just agriculture, but more importantly, the people in agriculture.
What was that turning point, and what is the thing that we're not harnessing enough for young people to turn that, hating it to that spark to want to go on to be incredible leaders in the industry like yourself, Jack?
Yeah, it was probably a unique situation for me. Like I worked under quite a hard bugger that Dad sort of told to straighten me out. So working under him, was pretty tough. But I think selling the story around like enjoying animals and and sort of getting that connection with the animals, and also just getting passionate about the land we farm, and yeah, just showing that it's not just about milking cows or shearing sheep or anything like that. There's actually a lot of technology coming into agriculture now, and I think there's a lot of avenues that can inspire people into the industry.
There must be something so rewarding, and we don't talk about it enough, I don't believe, in the farming industry, is the emotion surrounding farming. And from the feeling that you would have had going through, drugs and alcohol and cars, etc., as you explained, into being awarded, firstly, in 2016, the Ahawhenua Māori trophy, and that recognition and support from an industry and a group of people around you to say, you know what, Jack, you're good, you can do this. That must be a real turning point for you in your life.
Yeah. Like winning the Ahawhenua was a massive achievement for my career, and I guess I was rewarded for the way that I've been passionate about people and attracting people into this industry and really harnessing the great things that agriculture is doing, because we actually we are doing some really great things across the country, and I just don't think we're telling that story well enough, and I think there's still a lot of more people to inspire into this sector, and I'm really passionate about the people that not just work in the sector at the moment, but the ones that are yet to be inspired. I think there's a lot of opportunity there for us.
And the reason we're talking to you, Jack, is because you are on tour with your prize is being awarded the 2020 Zanda Mcdonald Award. For those who are listening and watching who don't know the significance of this award, could you please paint a picture of what this means to you and the future of agriculture? Jack frozen a wee bit there.
Yeah, it carries a lot. It's a very prestigious award that I hold very close to my heart. I think in memory of Zanda Mcdonald and his family and what he's achieved and how he gave back to the industry. I don't take being an ambassador for the award lightly, and I think I'm going to do everything in my in my stride to make sure that I'm living up to being an ambassador for the award and giving back to the people of agriculture. And I guess so a bit of context on the award. So it's an Australasian agribusiness award. So so it's sort of annual award that's been set up in memory of Zanda Mcdonald, but it's also established around a Triple P group, which is a group of people that are trying to bridge a gap between Australia and New Zealand and sort of get all of these great connections, because there's so many great people across Australia and New Zealand together and celebrate all the good things that are happening, but also give us guys that are coming into the industry and wanting to pay the way in the agricultural space a leg up. I think there's a real good environment for these, for us that are coming into the industry and wanting to make something of ourselves. There's a really good environment for progression amongst this Triple P group.
And it's a support network that is about wrapping the arms around the youth of this industry that are our future leaders and current leaders, as we heard there from Jack. Jack, share with us your trip. I understand you're with Richard Schofield tonight in Gisborne, and you're on tour with the almighty Shane McManaway and Matt Wyeth and co. What have you learnt so far? And tell us more about where you are off to tomorrow and throughout the rest of the week.
Yeah, so departed from the mighty West Coast on Sunday, and sort of arrived at Matt and Lindley Wyeth's Spring Valley Enterprises in the Wairarapa on Sunday night, and where I was met by Shane McManaway and Derek Daniel, where we went up and stayed or camped in Mount Dag Lodge, which was breathtaking experience for a number of reasons. They put me through the Dragon's Den, where they had $2 million that I was asking for to invest in a business or in a venture, and that was quite a good exercise for me to try and windle some cash out of them to invest in something that I was passionate about. And then so the next day and a lot of good conversation, just general conversation and hearing some of the successes and some of the potholes that both Shane and Derek and Matt have had along the way, and learnings from those experiences, but also making those good business decisions, but also how passionate and how important people are to any business, I think has been a really important takeaway. We visited Gold Creek State Farm where Shane and Lynette McManaway farm there, and we got to see some velveting that Kay, one of his managers there, was doing, which was quite stunning to see. We got to visit the Five Rivers building site, which is a medical facility that Shane and Lynette are building in Greytown, and got to hear Shane's values and some of the context around why he's doing, why he's giving back, and sort of the principles around that. So that was really cool. So then we went to lunch with John Monaghan, the chair of Fonterra, and got to listen to his journey through governance, through management, and through his career, and got to ask him some curly questions, around how he's managed the ups and downs of his life journey, and also just re-emphasising the importance of people in business and authenticity as a leader being really important. We went to Stu Weatherstone's dairy farm there, so it's one of the largest dairy farms in the Wairarapa. It was a 3,000 cow farm across 2 sheds, and he employed 13 staff, so quite a big operation in terms of people, and got to see some innovative stuff that he's doing with his people in terms of managing a large operation there. So got to listen to some good business insights from him and sort of his view on agriculture at the moment, which is really positive. And so that was really refreshing to hear that. And then, sort of headed back and camped up at Spring Valley Enterprises there. And then today we flew from Masterton to Gisborne, where we visited Integrated Foods and got to listen to their point of difference and how they've built their business. It's quite a unique business, which was quite cool to pick Gray Alexander and the general manager, Brett Henshaw, pick their brains on how they've formed that, but also Brett's come through a corporate ladder very quickly, so I was really keen to hear how he's done that and sort of absorb all the information I could get around that innovative thinking. And then we went to Leaderbrand as well, so we got to go through Leaderbrand building there, and they took us through their business. Murray McPhail sort of took us through his life journey and the ups and downs, and sort of how to manage risk and sort of how not to and how to, and the risks and lessons he's learned, and also the really positive things he's done over his career with his with the Leaderbrand business, which was really, really inspiring to hear, and he had some really gold nuggets around the people space as well. And then, we got to head around Richard, so Whangarā Farms. Richard Scholefield's the general manager of the Whangarā Farms here in Gizzy, and was just really good to so this property here has won the Ahu Whenua Trophy before, so it was really good to visit the property for that reason, but also Richard Schofield carries a really good reputation in the sheep and beef industry, so it was really good to rub shoulders with him in the ute today and get around some stunning properties. Like, there's some beautiful properties up here, and it's my first time in Gisborne as well, so it was really good to get out about and see the challenges that they face, and also the opportunities that lie ahead for the sheep and beef sector in Gizzy. And so we finished up here, sort of heading into the week, so heading to Taupo for a couple of days, and then going through Trinity Lands there, and meeting up with a couple other people there, and then going down to Blenheim and heading to Doug Avery's field day, beef and lamb field day in Blenheim. And then sort of I get handed over by Matt Wyeth, who's sort of led the North Island trip. I get handed over to Richard Subtool, and then do the South Island leg, which is really exciting, but lots to absorb, and I'm really excited, met so many good people, so many good connections, And it's just really opened my eyes around how many good people and how many people are willing to open their books and open their business and open their wisdom and give you a leg up into agriculture and into life. And there's just a really good people thing. Like, people is my passion and agriculture is my passion. And definitely reinforce the thought that to build a really good business, you need to make really good business decisions, but you also need to build teams in the process to help build that business. A couple of things I just want to point out, Sarah. I just want to thank the sponsors of the award. I really want to thank the Triple P Group. I want to thank the Zanda Mcdonald Award organisers. I want to thank Westpac. I want to thank Tamania Angus, McDonald Holdings, Allflex, Australian Community Media, and CBRE. Without those sponsors, it would not be possible to make an award like this possible for me. And I can see already we're only early in this this mentoring trip, but I can see it's going to be a very life-changing week and open up so many opportunities for me. And I just really want to take the time to thank all the people involved.
Don't know about the rest of you watching, but holy moly, that's pretty inspiring. And we can see why you took home the 2020 award, Jack. Absolutely congratulations on behalf of all the viewers and listeners here on Sarah's Country. You can see where $10,000 worth of tailored education at mentoring and the privately chartered aircraft that you are able to fly around in adds up. It's but it's the intangible, Jack, isn't it? Those the ability to ask the questions of our industry leaders. And Jack, it's an absolute privilege and pleasure to have you on the show. Thank you so much. And I look forward to following your career very closely. Congratulations again, and we will catch up with you in good time. Enjoy the rest of your trip. You're in safe and wonderful hands, I know that for sure. That's Jack Raharuhi there, the 2020 Zanda Mcdonald Award winner. It's just incredible. And I mean, I get the absolute privilege, and I don't take it lightly, to speak to these people, the industry leaders, on a regular basis. And they become, cell phone numbers in my phone and very good friends along the way. And but the thing is when people get to have that close one-on-one with their mentors and our industry leaders, they certainly absorb it like a sponge, like children with a parent. And we model our behaviour off our industry leaders. So I say that to you, industry leaders. Are you modelling behaviour you want our young ones to absorb? That is a challenge that I am putting on the table, and I think you all know what I mean. I also want to challenge you in what you can do to open up the door, sit around the kitchen table with the young one, and you know what? The young people that are on farms, don't you just go to the field day. Take them off farm with you. That is a challenge I want to issue to all of us, because they are our future, but they are also our present. It's been an absolute pleasure being with you tonight on Sarah's Country, and tomorrow night's going to be an absolute absolute winner, 7 p.m. Tomorrow night, election special, we have 5 agricultural spokespeople across the major political parties, and I will be putting the key 5 issues to them. I pre-recorded those with them. I do have to highlight that late last week, but I will have live commentary from subject expert commentators around each of them to summarise what they said. Is it pragmatic? Is it realistic? And will any of the suggestions and promises that political parties like to make actually get across the line? Don't miss it. It's going to be an extended version for at least an hour and a half, and summarised by Farmers Weekly's editor, Brian Gibson. We'll be talking everything from fresh water through to wool, and everything else in between. 7 p.m. Wednesday night, it will be live streamed on Farmers Weekly's YouTube, as well as, of course, on sarahscountry.com, and you will be able to get an extended version on demand on podcasts. It's been an absolute pleasure coming to you in alliance with the wonderful team at Farmers Weekly. I'm your host, Sarah Perrier, and I'll see you again tomorrow night. In the meantime, good night and go well. This is Sarah's Country.